You really think that splashing magic water on Stewie will keep him out of hell?
What's that kind of talk, or you'll get your heathen head smacked?
Well, that's very Christian. Believe what I say or I'll hurt you.
Now you're getting it.
Where are we?
This is Quahog, Brian. Same year, same time. But in this universe, Christianity never existed, which means the dark ages of scientific repression never occurred, and thus humanity is 1,000 years more advanced.
And then I'm like, okay, how are you going to end world hunger? And then it hit me. Sell the Vatican, feed the world.
Absolutely.
But let me ask you about this, because you did a movie called Predator. Let's talk about the Vatican.
That's a predator, too. Never got me, though, the Vatican. The Alien did, but not the Vatican.
My crazy radical friends, Christopher Hitchens and Richard Dawkins, say that if the Pope travels to England, which he's scheduled to do in September, he should be arrested when he hits the tarmac. Now, do you think that's going too far?
Well, I have another alternative, that a question I've asked here in the United States. Why hasn't the Catholic Church been prosecuted under the federal RICO laws of organized crime? Because it was set up to get the mafia. They're an organization that was involved in felony of covering it up. All the molestation and all that, those are felonies, and this is an organization involved in perpetrating those felonies. That's what the RICO laws were written for. Why have they not been charged?
It is pretty amazing that, you know, in any other office in the country, if you just made a joke about fucking kids, they'd come and put the cuffs on you.
Yeah, I just did an interview and they wanted to put the cuffs on me after the Playboy thing. But, you know, it's just, but I would like to have that question answered. Why don't they fall under the federal RICO laws of organized crime? They're an organization involved in felonies, multiples, and they move people around to protect them and all of that stuff. So,
in fact, whenever a cult leader sets himself up as God's infallible wingman here on Earth, lock away the kids. Which is why I'd like to tip off law enforcement to an even larger child-abusing religious cult. Its leader also has a compound. And this guy not only operates outside the bounds of the law, but he used to be a Nazi and he wears funny hats. That's right, the Pope is coming to America this week, and ladies, he's single. Now, I know what you're thinking. Bill, you can't be saying that the Catholic Church is no better than this creepy Texas cult. For one thing, altar boys can't even get pregnant. But really, what tripped up the little cult on the prairie was that they only abused hundreds of kids, not thousands all over the world. Cults get raided. Religions get parades. How does the Catholic Church get away with all of their buggery? Volume, volume, volume. If you have a few hundred followers and you let some of them molest children, they call you a cult leader. If you have 1 billion, they call you Pope. It's like, if you can't pay your mortgage, you're a deadbeat. But if you can't pay 1 million mortgages, you're Bear Stearns and we bail you out. And that's who the Catholic Church is, the Bear Stearns of organized pedophilia. Too big to fail. When the current Pope was in his previous Vatican job as John Paul's Dick Cheney, he wrote a letter instructing every Catholic bishop to keep the sex abuse of minors secret until the statute of limitations ran out. And that's the Church's attitude. We're here, we're queer, get used to it. Which is fine. Far be it from me to criticize religion. But just remember one thing. If the Pope was, instead of a religious figure, Merely the CEO of a nationwide chain of daycare centers where thousands of employees had been caught molesting kids and then covering it up, he'd be arrested faster than you can say, "Who wants to touch Mr. Wiggle?" The thing that argues for their side of this is that, you know what? He was coerced into that. He was a teenager. I wouldn't blame any He was a 14-year-old kid in Nazi Germany. Of course, he's going to do what they tell him to do. So on that score, you know what, my Catholic friends? I will never make the Pope is a Nazi joke again, because you're technically right, okay, and also because it distracts from the main points. And the main point I was making was that if the Pope, instead of a religious figure, was the CEO of a chain of nationwide daycare centers who had thousands of employees who had been caught molesting children and then covering it up, he would have been in jail.
And then we come to children. Well, it's all very well to say the world didn't know better. The world had no knowledge of how dangerous a crime child abuse was. Ratzinger, in 2003, he was prefect, I'm not making this up, he was prefect of the Congregation of the Doctrine of the Faith. And it was his job to deal with the child abuse scandal that was brewing. His first act was to write a letter to Catholic bishops ordering them, on pain of excommunication, not to talk to the police or anyone else. Investigations should be handled, he wrote, and I'm quoting that letter, in the most secretive way, restrained by perpetual silence. The Mexican founder of the Legion of Christ movement, Maciel Degollado, was protected from his own catalogue of child abuse, which is horrific. One cannot put on trial so close a friend of the Pope, said Ratzinger. When the allegations could no longer be denied, Maciel was sentenced to a life of prayer and penitence. And Ratzinger described the whole affair, and that of Bernard Law of Boston, to which my colleague also referred, as causing suffering for the Church and for me personally. He also said the answer would be to stop homosexuals from being allowed into the Church. The kind of cruelty in Catholic education, the kind of let's not call it child abuse, it was child rape. The kind of child rape that went on systematically for so long. Let's imagine that we can overlook this and say it is nothing whatever to do with the structure and nature of the Catholic Church and the twisted, neurotic and hysterical way that its leaders are chosen. The celibacy, the nuns, the monks, the priesthood. This is not natural and normal, ladies and gentlemen, in 2009. It really isn't. I'm sorry. For me to be called a pervert by these extraordinarily sexually dysfunctional people, I don't think human history's ever had more. Strange thing about this church, it is obsessed with sex. Absolutely obsessed. Now they will say, we with our permissive society and our rude jokes are obsessed. No, we have a healthy attitude. We like it, it's fun, it's jolly, because it's a primary impulse, it can be dangerous and dark and difficult. It's a bit like food in that respect, only even more exciting. The only people who are obsessed with food are anorexics and the morbidly obese. And that, in erotic terms, is the Catholic Church in a nutshell. There are all kinds of ways we can search for the truth. You do not need this imperial panoply of marble and gold. Do you know who would be the last person ever to be accepted as a prince of the church? The Galilean carpenter, that Jew. They would kick him out before he tried to cross the threshold. He would be so ill at ease in the church. That simple and remarkable man, if he said the things that he was said to have said, what would he think? What would he think of St. Peter's? What would he think of the wealth and the power and the self-justification and the wheedling apologies? What would he think of a man who calls himself the father, a celibate who dared to lecture people on what family values are? What would he think of any of that? He would be horrified. But there is a solution. There is an answer. There is redemption available for all of us and any one of us. And for the Catholic Church, funnily enough, I think it's a novel by Morris West. The Pope could decide that all this power, all this wealth, this hierarchy of princes and bishops and archbishops and priests and monks and nuns could be sent out in the world with money and art treasures to put them back in the countries that they once raped and violated, whose original systems of animism and belief and simplicity they told would take them straight to hell. They could give that money away, and they could concentrate on the apparent essence of their belief. And then I would stand here and say the Catholic Church may well be a force for good in the world. But until that day, it is not. Thank you.